catch me howling at the moon.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. Today we're talking all about King's Dominion, the Cedar Fair park located in Doswell, Virginia, just north of Richmond. By happenstance, I was able to visit King's Dominion in both 2021 and 2022, and this is a park that I really enjoy. May of 2021 was my first ever trip to King's Dominion and the first stop on my Southeast road trip. And then I made a return visit this year in 2022. Mainly to go down the road to Williamsburg to ride Pantheon, but I was equally excited to get some redemption rides on Intimidator 305, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but also just to experience King's Dominion again, because the park left a really good impression on me in 2021. And I'm happy to say that my second visit reaffirmed all of the positive experiences I had from my first time at the park. I really like King's Dominion. I'll give all of my thoughts on KD during today's trip report, but first, if you guys are new to the channel, please be sure to drop a sub, as it does help us out quite a bit. So let's start off this trip report by doing a lightning round of the roller coasters of King's Dominion. Great Pumpkin Coaster is a junior coaster that I did not ride because it was closed in 2021, and then I guess I just kind of forgot about it in 2022. Woodstock Express is the park's oldest operating coaster, and you guys know by now that I really like these PTC family wooden coasters. I think they're very charming and a perfect stepping stone coaster for the youngsters. Apple's Apple is the park's standard Wild Mouse coaster. It's a fun ride, and I like the name and how it fits in with the Candy Apple Grove area of the park. Toonbeely is the park's new for 2022 SNS 40 free spin coaster, and everyone says that these smaller versions of the free spin model are a lot better, but I didn't really notice a difference between this and the Joker model. I also really do not like the free spins, but I do appreciate the theming on this one, and I think it was a nice addition for that spot. Reptilian is the other new credit I picked up during my 2022 visit, since that area was being renovated in 2021. And oddly, this is the second only bobsled coaster I've ever been on, with the other being Disaster Transport at Cedar Point. And it was a lot of fun. You pick up some pretty good speed during the finale, and I really like the look of the new trains. Anaconda is the park's classic aero looper. It's got that amazing setting right over the lake, and I didn't think it was as rough as a lot of people make it out to be. I sat in the back car and I thought it was fine. Although the butterfly double turnaround element is pretty janky, and is right up there at the top among the most useless elements on any roller coaster. I would say that this is a prime location for a future roller coaster, but with the volcano area still being unoccupied, Anaconda is most likely safe for a while. Backlot Stone Coaster is the park's premier rides family launch coaster, and I really like these coasters. I think they're a ton of fun and are sneaky thrilling. I've always loved the tunnel portion, and they even have a decent bit of intensity on the back end of that launch going up into the helix. Rebel Yell, aka Racer, is the park's racing wooden coaster, which I really liked. The layout is literally just all airtime hills, and it's just a really fun classic wooden coaster. Flight of Fear is another Premier Rides launch coaster located indoors, and this is another ride that I think is really solid. It's got good intensity, fun inversions, and the indoor portion definitely enhances the ride experience. Grizzly is the park's PTC wooden coaster, and while a lot of people complain about this ride, I thought it was actually good. Not the greatest layout by any means, but I thought the roughness was tolerable, and it actually had some decent pops of airtime. Dominator is the park's B&M floorless coaster, and it is definitely one of the best of its model. At 4,200 feet of track, it's the longest floorless coaster in the world, and it definitely feels like it. I also like it when these B&Ms do more than just throw inversion after inversion at you. Dominator features a couple of speed turns and has one of the more unique floorless layouts. Now let's talk about part one of this park's two-headed monster. Twisted Timbers, the RMC hybrid version of Hurler. Of the dozen RMCs I've been on at the time of this video, Twisted Timbers is in the top half of those. The main reason I like this ride so much is because the first half is pure bliss. All of the elements are purposeful, and the 3 straight camelbacks are so well paced and give some of the best ejector moments on any RMC period. These feel like the RMC version of El Toro's hills. But once you hit this turnaround for the last lap, the ride loses me. It's another case of my well-noted pet peeve, where RMC gets too cute with elements that are abrupt and throw you around, and only serve the purpose of filling out the rest of the layout rather than actually doing anything. Honestly, I would have preferred if the ride just ended right here rather than doing that second lap. But outside of my coaster dork nitpicking, Twisted Timbers is still an excellent coaster. Intimidator 305 is of course one of only 2 Intamin Giga coasters in the world, and this thing is is a monster. During my first visit to KD, there was bad weather all morning, so my first two rides on I-305 were in the pouring rain, and as you can guess, they were extremely painful. And they ended up closing the ride for the day shortly after that, so I left my first visit with a mostly inconclusive opinion on this coaster. But on my second visit, I was able to get a handful of redemption rides on I-305, and they did not disappoint. I kind of feel like a broken record saying this, but I tend to prefer airtime over intensity in laterals, so I-305 isn't really my ideal breed of coaster. But there's no denying that this is a great ride. The best way I'd describe it is uniquely intense. You kind of just sit there helpless while the ride just throws you all over the place. The incredible speed, rapid transitions, and high G-forces make it easily one of the top 3, if not the most intense coaster I've been on. I-305 is on a completely different level and is definitely not for the faint of heart. At this point for me, I think it barely edges out Twisted Timbers as my favorite ride in the park, but it's really close. Overall, I think King's Dominion has a really deep coaster lineup. Obviously, they have a phenomenal top 2, but beyond that, the rest are all solid. And even if Anaconda and Grizzly aren't your cup of tea, the rest of the coasters are all pretty much unanimously people pleasers. Let's run through some of my other random thoughts and notes on King's Dominion. If you're visiting King's Dominion for the first time, it's good to note that they open the front area of the park 30 minutes before the park's listed opening, so you can get some bonus rides in on Dominator before the park actually opens. If you're planning on eating at the park, I highly recommend Grain and Grill on International Street. They have a bunch of high quality options, and it's honestly some of the best park food I've ever had. The park has a cute little shooting dark ride called Boo Blasters that you will definitely miss if you don't actively seek it out, because it's pretty well hidden right behind Woodstock Express. For whatever reason, King's Dominion was way bigger than I expected it to be, and I guess that shouldn't have shocked me, because in terms of actual in-park acreage, it's the largest of the Cedar Fair parks. But if you plan on going from I-305 to Grizzly, just be aware that you're in for at least a 20-minute hike. But despite being so large, King's Dominion is still up there as one of the prettiest Cedar Fair parks. Most of the pathways have good tree coverage, all the landscaping looks great, and overall the park is obviously well taken care of and has a ton of natural beauty. I find it just a really charming and pleasant park to be at. You may remember in a video from a few months ago, I said that because Carowinds has been so heavily renovated by Cedar Fair over the past decade, it feels a little corporate-y and lacking in character. In contrast, King's Dominion kind of has this quirkiness to it. And like King's Island, King's Dominion seems to do a good job of celebrating and embracing its history, which I love when parks do. The park also very much has this distinct Virginia feel to it. There's no question what state you're in when you're strolling down the midway at King's Dominion. For my 2 experiences, the operations at this park were fantastic. Both visits were relatively busy days, yet I can't recall waiting more than 20 minutes for anything. The operators really kept trains moving. And from a management perspective, the park seems to be ran very well. For example, when I visited the first time in 2021, they were glaringly short-staffed, but despite that, still managed to open almost all of their rides throughout the day. In the final 2 hours of the park being open, I was still missing 2 available coasters, Apple's Apple and Woodstock Express, neither of which had opened all day. And the fact that KD put in the effort to get as many of its rides open on a day where the weather was just horrible, when I know that so many other parks in the country wouldn't even bother, really left a good impression on me. And of the parks that I've visited since 2020, King's Dominion is one that I think handled the pandemic the best in terms of operating as close to full capacity as possible. You'd be surprised how many parks are still crutching onto the pandemic and staffing issue excuses in 2022. Now, I hadn't visited King's Dominion before 2021, but neither of my visits had any glaring closures or frustrating operations at all, outside of that early closure of I-305, which I think was solely because that ride is just extremely unpleasant in the rain. But to me, King's Dominion is one of those parks that I go to and can sense that the employees and management seem to just get it. Moving on, the new for 2022 Jungle Expedition area of the park looks great, and I've said it before, but I love this trend of Cedar Fair renovating entire areas alongside new attractions. I'm excited to see what direction the park goes in this next phase of this area's expansion with the Volcano plot of land. Since Volcano was such a unique and beloved coaster with a massive footprint, they really have no choice but to go big for its replacement. And this is a bit of a tangent, but do you guys remember in 2019, it was leaked that King's Dominion was planning on adding a B&M wing coaster in Volcano Spot. This was leaked in the same year that King's Dominion had a Monster Jam experience within the park, and also around the time that concept art for a monster truck themed wing coaster was released at IAAPA. So everyone just jumped to the conclusion that this was going to be Volcano's replacement. Looking back, I think this was almost certainly leaked by the park in an effort to try and measure the public's opinion on how major of an addition would be an acceptable replacement for Volcano. And while a B&M wing coaster would be a significant addition for 95% of parks in the country, the KD fans were understandably pretty ticked off about this. And so I think the park saw the feedback, took a step back, and decided to first add Tumbili to hold people over, while they planned and built up capital for something truly worthy of being Volcano's replacement in 2024 or 2025. And if I had to choose, I think building a modern, airtime-packed B&M Hyper would be an excellent addition to the park. It would give them another high-capacity ride that would perfectly complement I-305 and Timbers. And if they could build something comparable to Fury in the 200 to 230 foot range, man, would it give that park a hell of a top 3. To sum things up, I think King's Dominion is a really nice park. And when you factor in its ride lineup, operations, and overall park atmosphere and setting, I think King's Dominion is probably a top 3 park in the Cedar Fair chain, especially in light of the problems Knott's has been having lately. But I think with all the things this park does well, it deserves to be up there in the conversation with Kings Island and Cedar Point. And with a major coaster almost certainly coming down the pipeline, I think its case is only going to get stronger in the future. But anyways, that's going to do it for this King's Dominion trip report. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed. Thank you guys for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time.